Our very special guest is Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito. This is actually her second appearance. She was our first guest on our new radio station. And welcome back to Reaching Out.
Thank you for having me. This is great, 14 months later.
There's no shortage of important issues that we want to discuss, but the topic that we at Local 237 are mostly concerned about is public housing.
Yes.
New York City public housing. We are facing a dire shortage, both on the three front. City government is now starting to help out, but for, I would say, 12 years, the city hasn't given NYCHA any money. Same with the state, 12 years, and the federal government has been scaling back.
Correct.
Where do you see NYCHA going?
I mean, look, we need to do everything we can. This to me, it's a all hands on deck moment, right? And I've consistently said that public housing has always been a priority for me because I, first of all, represent the most public housing. Any one district in this city that has the most is myself. I represent about 20,000 units. So it is something that I'm been very engaged in, and my concern is always about how do we make sure that this authority is the most effective and efficient that it can be, because they're, taking care of incredible amount of public housing, an incredible amount of housing, which is affordable in the city of New York. So we have seen this disinvestment, like you've been saying, so we could figure out what can we do to figure it out. So I know that with the new administration and new leadership, there is a focus on first, how do you streamline and make this entity more effective and efficient with the resources it has? But then how do we find additional funds and resources to invest in the authority? So I'm we've always advocated for the state to put more money in. And it looks like this year we're going to see some level of investment in public housing, which is great. Obviously nowhere near what we need, but at least now we're starting to see a commitment. The Cuomo had put in $25 million in his budget, but it looks like we may get more than that. So I'm happy to hear that. And then with this administration, there is an acknowledgement that the public housing is important. So, for instance, last year when we saw that Mayor de Blasio stopped NYCHA from paying the $75 million towards police resources, right? Policing in public housing. That money is being reinvested in the authority, but we need more capital money. We put capital money in as a city council. So there are things that are happening, and now they're looking at, I guess, the second version of infill, that idea originally proposed by de Blasio about doing development within the footprints of public housing as a way of trying to generate more resources and money. So there's different things that are being looked at. We just want to make sure that anything that is being done in a collaborative way with input from residents, that they're part of the decision-making process. And so that's something that we're going to continue to have oversight over, and that's what kind of we put to the table. But I'm committed, to seeing what we can do and to continue to safeguard this important affordable housing stock.
Yeah, because the last deal, the first deal that NYCHA did a few months ago, it caught everyone by surprise. They continued on I would say, the Mayor Bloomberg's administration's attempt to, I would say, privatize some of the housing developments there. But I think it was just an apartments, and they sold it or leased it to a private company, a private developer. And they didn't give anybody the opportunity to say anything.
I mean, this has historically been an issue with the authority. Unfortunately, the level of communication is not the most fluid. And it creates more anxiety if people don't know what's going on and the reasons why something is happening. So, yes, that transaction should have had more engagement with the residents and us as elected officials. We kind of were left out of the conversation a little bit. But understanding, again, the financial challenges, the authority is, I guess, trying to figure out what they can do. So that transaction is that NYCHA is going into partnership with private developers to protect, they're saying, these project-based Section 8 units, which are in disrepair. And that partnership with the private developers will have them, one, infuse money by making all the capital repairs needed for those residents, and then they'll manage the properties moving forward. So NYCHA is not going to be managing the properties. And then 35 years down the line, they'll come back to the table and figure out what to do. NYCHA says their commitment is to continue it affordable moving forward. There's no interest on their part, they're saying, to sell off their part of it or to have it be sold off to a private interest. So we'll see what, 35 years from now. But in the meantime, those residents are getting those repairs done. And we've engaged. I have one of those developments in my district. So we've been engaging with the residents, and they seem to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, some would say NYCHA is creeping toward privatization because the plans that they have, private developers bringing them in, we got to be careful, and we got to watch that NYCHA is not trying to privatize developments. Because,
that can't happen.
Yeah, because we're losing. The federal government has a program, and they're getting away from, I would say, traditional public housing and going more toward privatization.
Well, this Congress in particular, we should be very concerned about because it's, Republican one, and they don't really usually care about these types of issues. And it's a bit on the reactionary side, too. So it really gives more cause for concern. So I, unfortunately, am a really optimistic person, but in this case, I am not optimistic that we're going to see additional resources for public housing in New York City. If anything, they probably would want to cut additional funding to HUD, which is the entity that funds NYCHA. So we have to continue to be vigilant, and we got to put the pressure on. But, I know this mayor, because we've spoken about it. Again, public housing is a priority for us, is committed to public housing, and we are extremely committed as a city council to public housing, and we've stood up time and again for the residents.
And now NYCHA is facing, I wouldn't say management problems, but they're facing a management crisis because we have a new chair, Shola Olatea, and now we have the general manager leaving, Cecil House. And it seems to be a void that's going to be created there. And it's going to be interesting to find out, one, who they hire as the general manager, and two, how fast that person will be up to speed. Right.
That's always any sort of transition in leadership is cause of concern. Is that transition going to happen smoothly? There is always the learning curve. In the meantime, the residents are the ones kind of left, right? So we got to make sure that is a smooth transition and that, again, that they work honestly and genuinely to really engage the residents in all decision-making that they do.
The mayor speaks about his plan for increased affordable housing, and I know NYCHA must be a centerpiece in that because they have open land, and I know he's actively trying to entice developers to come and develop on that land and make it, some say, affordable housing, and I would say what's affordable. Some people say just rent stabilized housing.
Right. Well, he has an aggressive housing plan, but there's two aspects to it. One is the building of new units, which obviously we need more affordable units. There's also the preservation side of preserving existing affordable units. So bringing and infusing, like my district that he's identified as a district he wants to do a rezoning. Oh, well, before we build anything new, what are the resources that the city is going to commit to making sure that we maintain the affordable units that are there? We protect, we have tenants with need protection. What protections are we going to provide before we think about building anything new? And I think I would include public housing in that too.
Sure.
When we talk about preservation, right? You want to preserve these units. And part of the conversation also is that because of the lack of repair, in some cases, you have a lot of units that are offline or have been offline for years. Those are new units that could be put online, and we could be housing families, that are on the waiting list. So those are the kinds of conversations we've had with the admin is like that should be considered, you're putting units online, that should count towards the number, right, of affordable units. So the NYCHA has to be part of the conversation about the housing plan that the mayor has put forth, and, I think we'll get there.
And speaking of that, I know the city council didn't know this, but last year, 2014, NYCHA spent its overtime budget for the entire year. By the end of March, their overtime budget for the entire year was gone, which means that they couldn't schedule repairs to be done on the weekends. They couldn't schedule a lot of work because they didn't have the money to do that. And it was as if, I know the chair wasn't there at this time, and in the interim, it was like it was almost taken advantage of, and somebody there decided to take advantage of the administration because they were coming in, getting up to speed, selecting the chair. NYCHA was on the autopilot, and the money was spent before Shola could even come in.
Wow. Well, I mean that's obviously not a good thing, and so hopefully with this new leadership, we'll see some management happen that'll ensure that doesn't take place. Because at the end of the day, what's being done is you were shortchanging the residents.
Yes.
Right. That are not, like you're saying, that are not getting the repairs. That have to wait an exorbitant amount of time. So that's stuff that we have to continue to monitor, and we continue to push them on it. I know we have a great public housing chair. We've had a lot of oversight hearings, but this continues to be an ongoing challenge. And I think that there is a genuine interest on behalf of Shola, to the new chair, to really straighten things out and to have NYCHA be more efficient in the use of its resources so that we can dedicate more, for the capital improvements and the repairs that need to happen.
That's all the time we have for Reaching Out. We're going to ask the speaker, Melissa Mark-Viverito, to come back again. And I'm Gregory FLOYD, President Local 237 Teamsters. You've been listening to Reaching Out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.